I've passed a bunch of 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and sometimes 4.5-year-olds over the years, and with each one I have all kinds of hope and expectations that they will get an opportunity to develop and grow to their full potential. Owning property here in Michigan, I know that because of our high hunting pressure, long firearm seasons on bucks, and just the overall hunting culture here in the Mitten State, that is a high expectation, and I know that at least half of the deer that I let walk by never make it through the hunting season. There's also other things that happen as well, like car kills, some poaching, and then just natural mortality. But I will say I still have just as much enthusiasm with each whitetail buck that I pass, hoping that this is the year that this one will survive and will make my property his home and be the homeboy that he is, so that I can follow him closely and monitor his movements, watch his seasonal growth patterns, and hopefully see if he develops into that monster I've dreamed of. There are some whitetails that I did have great opportunities on, and they were beautiful deer at 3.5 years old, like this one right here that I nicknamed Side Wound. He was a beautiful buck and stayed around my property an awful lot, so I passed him a handful of times, from 1.5, 2.5, and a few times as a 3.5. But as you can see right here, not all good things that I do come to a good ending. He met his demise with some illegal poachers. I also had an incredible deer using the property one year, and he was just majestic. It turns out my great friend and neighbor that I've spent much time with was lucky enough to take him with archery equipment. With many deer that I've taken over the years here on my well-managed property, most of them I have got some kind of history with, and a few I have several years of history with. Leads me to my story about the buck that I killed this year. Enter 2022, the year I noticed a very interesting 2.5-year-old with dark chocolate antler bases. He kept his chocolate bases in 2023 and his body kept expanding. He was definitely getting my interest at this point. As a 4.5-year-old, his body and antlers increased proportionately. I did have an encounter with him on November 1st of 2024, but it was right at daylight and I just wasn't prepared, and he got past me. He survived the 24 hunting season and showed up on camera regularly all winter long. Okay, about 40 yards away. Oh, look right here. I got another one. So I've got one right here. And there's a big old antler. Where is he? He's right there, if you can see it. But hey, I got one here too. Nice. Okay, pretty sure it's an antler. Yeah, it absolutely is. Oh, and I know which deer this is. He's got chocolate bases. He was a nice 10, and I let him go this year. And darned, he made it. He absolutely made it. Oh, yeah. Looky there, what I spy. I found the other side. And these antlers were maybe 50 yards apart. Look. Oh, awesome. Oh, awesome. I went ahead and staged this side-by-side photo just so you could see both sides of this buck. I started getting a few trail cam pictures of him in June. His double left brow tine assured me that it was him. As the summer matured, I'd get a couple pictures here and there, but he was a very random deer when it came to summertime velvet pictures. By early October, I was getting a few pictures of him at his favorite scrape zone. The afternoon of October 15th, I was hunting my Seclusion 360 destination food plot, and wouldn't you know it, he made an entrance. He was only about 45 to 50 yards away, and I zoomed in while I was holding the camera by hand, and he put on a show. He's working a scrape on a wild plum limb right there, and just watching him and his chocolate-colored antlers and his behavior, his thick body, his thick neck, I was just in awe to be able to see him right out in front of me, as comfortable as he was. There were other deer in the field, and he paid little attention to them. He moved around on the western side of the plot, on and off for about 15 to 20 minutes. At one time, he made his way towards the cedar scrape tree that all deer seem to, and I thought for sure I was going to get my opportunity. But he stopped with the limbs behind his vitals, and it just wasn't supposed to be that night. But I sure enjoyed the show he put on and his majestic beauty. After that encounter with him, I started getting quite a few pictures very predictably throughout his core area on my property. He was hitting all the scrapes, most of them under darkness, sometimes during daylight, but he was always around. It just turned out no matter where I hunted, I couldn't get him out in front of me. My property is no different than anybody else's here in the Mitten State. About noon on October 25th, my cell camera sent me pictures of trespassers walking right through areas on my property I haven't been in since August. And wouldn't you know it, turns out these trespassers, who were tracking a deer that they had shot the night before from about a half-mile southwest of my property, had come onto my property and of course crossed plenty of others without any permission, including mine, and were in the process of cutting the head off of a deer that the coyotes had found and pretty much had eaten at least half of it. When I asked them if they knew whose property it was, you should have heard the excuses they had, and they tried to name one of the large farmers and said, "Oh, he's owned this property for 40 years." And I said, "I've owned the property for nearly 50, and he never owned this property." Just typical of what you run into in southern Michigan. But despite that disturbance, it turned out that that buck pretty much remained in his bedding area and continued to cruise around and avoid me like the warrior he was. I saved all my good pinch points for ideal condition hunts, what we'd call rut hunts. I passed many good deer, but I just couldn't get that deer to come in front of me. Sighting him during the rut hunts was just about impossible. I kept the hunting pressure low and hunted only ideal sets where the wind was to my advantage, and like all mature bucks, he played that wind to his advantage as well. I kept getting good pictures. Every few days, sometimes twice a day, of him working scrapes and using the property, so I knew he was here. I just had to figure out when and where. The afternoon of November 21st, it was overcast, temps were in the low 40s, we had a west-northwest wind, plus I had a setting moon that last 45 minutes of daylight. It had turned cold, we'd had snow, it had melted off, but I knew the does would be in the beans and the brassicas and the milo. I just had a hunch that this buck was spending a lot of time in all the thickets and bedding areas surrounded by the conifers. So I decided to go into my 4-acre field blind and thought I'd sit out there with my 450 Bushmaster and see if he doesn't poke his head out and push a few does. 3 does came out after I'd been there about an hour, and they kept looking to the west, and you see the one kind of ran off, and I think she was being pestered or agitated by something that I couldn't see. I was hand filming here and just getting some footage, and I set the camera down and he walked right into this opening, but I didn't get it on camera. Shortly after this, he stepped over by the apple tree and I took my shot. Once I saw him come through the opening, I had to quickly open my window, get my gun out, find him in my sight window, and then see if I could make the shot or not. It probably all was 10 to 15 seconds. But once I found the top of his shoulder in the crosshairs, I squeezed it off and I knew it was good. Okay, I just took a shot on my target buck. I think he just went straight down. Let's go see. Yeah, by golly, he's laying right there. Oh, praise the Lord. This is one heck of a deer. Scanthus grass, Roundup Ready soybeans, overseeded with brassicas. He was in here pushing does tonight. And look at that. Look at that sight. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And the cool thing is, well, we'll come up and get some great video of him. Oh my gosh. Oh my. What a beautiful deer. And I've got both his sheds. And the cool thing is, I hit him right up in the top of the shoulder and it dropped him. And look at the body. And right there, if you look, see that Banks blind right there? I shot him right out of there. And I did all this work this year. Awesome. And it all paid off. And without cutting that opening in the switchgrass, I'd have never gotten this shot. That's why I did it. Apple tree here. Oh my gosh. Oh, does he smell like? I got him tagged right away. And then I set up my video camera and just held him in a number of different positions. And then these are some screenshots from that video that shows just what he looked like right after I shot him before it got dark. Not too bad for an amateur, I must say. This area has really changed since my buddy Randy and I set the blind in this location 3 seasons ago. What started out as warm season grasses with a little strip of rye and crimson clover, I completely changed and planted multiple forages and turned it into the successful hunting spot it was for me this year. I've been watching this area for many years, and I just noticed how the deer were using it, how the doe groups took over different areas, and how the bucks cruised it during about a 10-day to 2-week period during late November. And that is why I set this up the way I did. From an early season burn in early April to moving existing spruce trees into the field a few days later, planting all the different forages with a couple of different drills, herbicide applications, and foliar feeding applications, it turned out that every bit of this was worth the effort. I've said this a few times, and it really is true in so many things you do, especially in habitat. The harder you work, the luckier you get. And remember, good luck and good habitat, everybody. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.